Yo guys, Coach Theo here on Common Sense. Today I'm gonna react to a video by Jeff Nippard when he also brought on Mike Israetel, or Israetel, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce his name, but I know him very well, Dr. Mike. So it's a video when they go through fitness advice and rate it as either overrated or underrated and give their each perspective take on the advice in question. And so I saw this video a few days ago, and there were many things I agreed with, but some things I did not agree quite as much with, and some things that I really disagreed with. And so these are science guys, evidence-based guys, and they have a lot of good content. Jeff Nippard especially was someone that I myself learned a lot from when I got into lifting and hadn't, crafted any own approach or philosophy on lifting yet. But I'm more of an uncommon sense guy. I'm someone that likes to go into the gym and use myself as a research subject, study what works and what doesn't. And these days also with the clients that I train and coach. And I just find that a lot of the time, coming at fitness from this very, very science-focused perspective, it becomes a little over-intellectualized sometimes, and sometimes dogmatic, and sometimes there are things that just work in real life that the science doesn't always necessarily support. And sometimes the science can be pointing in a certain direction, but when you apply a little bit of logic in that, you can still see that it can make sense to do something that isn't necessarily what the science is pointing towards, that will still be beneficial, or that there will be other reasons to do it than purely this is best for muscle growth, for instance. So yeah, I'm just gonna let the video roll and stop and react, and it's a 40-minute video, so it's probably gonna be quite a long video, I have no idea. But without further ado, let's get into it.
In this video, I'm ranking 19 controversial fitness topics as either overrated or underrated. And for some extra scientific credibility, this time I'm pulling in exercise scientist Dr. Mike Israetel, who
Okay, Israetel, apparently.
not only has a PhD in sport physiology, but is a competitive bodybuilder himself. I'm giving us 15 seconds each to explain why we think each item is overrated or underrated, and we'll be covering 3 categories: training, nutrition, and hot fitness topics. Here we go.
The first category is training, cheat reps, also known as ego lifting.
I just have how they present that even. Cheat reps, also known as ego lifting. It's not necessarily ego lifting. We call it cheat reps because we cheat by using other muscles than the ones we're trying to target to in fact target the muscle or hit it, overload it with more weight. It doesn't have to do with ego necessarily. So yeah.
Go first.
It is a journey without an end or a purpose. When you think it through, cheat reps are stupid on almost all counts. You end up having a higher probability of injury, a lower probability of stimulating the target muscle, and a very difficult time tracking.
Well, yeah, there might be a high risk of injury, but there just are certain muscles or certain exercises when I find it superior to be using some kind of cheat form. Maybe not always start, like, oh, I'm gonna just start with way heavier weight than I can handle. I have to cheat from the start. But take something like rowing exercises, for instance. If you just perform them with super strict form, chances are that you will fail to perform a rep way before you've actually stimulated the muscle to grow. So I think on certain exercises it really makes sense, some more than others. So rows would be a typical example where I would like it doesn't have to be either or. Yeah, I like cheat reps, or no, I don't like it at all. I would like to start out like something like a barbell row, doing a strict form, but if my form breaks down and I have to use a little bit of body English, maybe use my legs just a little bit to push beyond, so that I feel I actually get a good training stimulus, that would make sense to me.
I agree that they're overrated. I think for the most part, people should use good technique. I would argue that on certain exercises, for example, bicep curls, if doing a little bit of cheating and slight momentum allows you to get another rep and then you control the eccentric, that might be an extra controlled eccentric that you wouldn't have gotten if you hadn't used that little bit of momentum. So I think that they can have some value, but I would still say overall, mostly overrated.
Yeah, so the funny thing is that for me personally, something like a biceps curl I've noticed that cheat reps just don't work well for me. Even if I try to do it in the way that Jeff described there, use cheat and then control the eccentric. For me, when I go too heavy on something like curls, other muscles like shoulders and other arm flexors, forearm muscles, just take over. So this is, again, it's going to be individual. What I would say is, like, whatever you do, when you go into your lifting, like be honest with yourself. Like, is this working? And me cheating, using a bit of body, am I just telling myself like, oh, I'm overloading the muscle this way? Or do you just like to swing around heavy weight and don't actually stimulate it, you know? And is your progress driven by actually getting stronger or growing the muscle, or is it that you just cheat and butcher the form more and more? It's going to be individual. So I say yes, go strict most of the time, but sometimes it makes sense to do cheat reps, and you know, you're gonna have to determine yourself, be honest with yourself.
Muscle soreness.
I think it can be a good proxy that you did actually hit the target muscle. It can be an indication that the muscle you were trying to hit was in fact stimulated. But I think a lot of people are under the impression that if you didn't get sore, that means you didn't have a good workout or you didn't grow muscle, which is definitely not true. And in that sense, I would say it's overrated.
Pretty much agree with that. You don't have to get sore. But yeah, I remember that I kind of agree with what Dr. Mike goes on to say.
I think it's become fashionable lately in the evidence-based community to say that soreness is overrated, or more specifically, that soreness doesn't really mean anything and that soreness is only a side effect of novelty. I think that fails on about 7 or 8 logical grounds. When you do more volume, more intensity, proper progression, when you come closer to failure, when you generate a lot of metabolites, when you focus on the eccentric, when you train along muscle lengths, all of those things tend to cause more soreness. And to me, that sounds like a very, very close link causatively to hypertrophy. It's okay if you're not getting sore, but if you're not progressing and you feel like you're understimulating, trying to get sore is probably a good idea. And if you're getting sore, you have 99 problems, but stimulus is not one.
I agree with this completely, actually. Like, you don't have to get sore as long as you see that you're making progression. You know, you can add reps or weight on your exercises in your program. That's okay. But definitely, muscle soreness is always an indicator that, yeah, you are working these muscles. You are doing something, right? And so if you never ever get sore and you're not making progress, absolutely, like chasing soreness a bit. If you change something up, you now get sore, probably this was the right way to go and you'll see yourself making progress now.
Okay.
Training each muscle only once a week, also known as a bro split.
There are better ways to train than training one muscle group once a week, especially if you're talking about small muscle groups. Like if you train your rear delts once a week or your biceps once a week, there's absolutely no way they take that long to recover. You just missed opportunity. And legs or something, or if you have a huge back is fine once a week, but it's also not optimal. I think you should train muscles when they recover. That generally occurs anywhere between every day or 2 times a week.
Yeah, I agree. A little bit of devil's advocate.
Yeah, no, I agree. I would say that sometimes bro splits, I guess if it is specifically training a muscle just once per week, then I definitely think it's overrated. I mean, I don't even think it's overrated. I guess some people think this is a good way to go, but there are, though, splits that is, natural hypertrophy, the YouTuber, he's coined the term like a gentleman split, where it can be more of a body part focused workout that you do, but because it's push pull legs, upper lower, full body. We have these splits that are supposed to be optimal. There are like bro-like splits that can still be good, but I would agree if we're talking specifically about just training a muscle once per week, no, twice, or some muscles even more often.
The latest frequency research does show that a bro split is a viable approach, but I would say it's probably not the optimal approach.
Don't spend 2 hours per workout 5 days in the gym to do a perfectly fine approach. No one in here in the gym right now wants perfectly fine. They want jacked. It's the same number of days a week. You show up and not do a bro split, you get better results.
What about training to failure?
So I think overrated.
Typical science guys. Training to failure is overrated. Let's hear what they have to say.
I think that the research shows that there's not a huge difference in terms of hypertrophy or strength if you go all the way to failure or if you stop a couple reps shy. I think people think going to failure is super, super important. And I think you have to know what failure feels like, but I do think overall it's overrated and not as important as a lot of bodybuilders think.
I don't think it's overrated at all, and to be honest, this is one thing where I think the science-based approach, this is not what most people need to hear. You don't need to train to failure, because most people in the gym that you see, their problem is not that they're training to failure too much. No, it's that they're not training hard enough. So it becomes a little like, but the research suggests that, but whatever. What do people really need to hear? do most people need to hear, you don't actually need to train to failure? But I agree, Jeff does say that you need to know what it feels like, because I would say that when you're more advanced, when you really know what failure feels like, and you can be honest about, actually I did leave 1 or I did leave 2 reps in the tank. But a lot of people, when they think they leave 2 reps in the tank, they might even leave 7 reps in the tank sometimes. So, and I am a big fan of training to failure in general for many other reasons, but let's listen to Dr. Mike too.
Agreed, and I would add that most of the people that are saying that failure is super important are coming from an egotistical perspective in which they need to emotionally drain themselves in the gym. And
Egotistical perspective. It's funny, I feel like this is a projection. Just, I guess because a lot of people criticize Mike about, because he is not a fan of training to failure. But you know, this is what I want to say. I think it's very, very good for muscle growth. I'm someone that for these 5 years, I've had a train to failure or even beyond on most exercises most of the time approach all the time. And I've been making very, very good progress. So I'm a fan of it for this reason. But then it's not ego that, I need to just feel like I drain myself in the gym, I'm such a beast. I like to get a kick out of that. But I like someone like myself, I'm definitely a bodybuilder. I like building a physique. That's a high priority on my list. But I'm looking to use my practice, my approach to lifting for other things, self-development wise. And so training to failure, training very, very hard, it's good for anti-fragility, stress resistance, mindset. So it is both good for building muscle and you get a ton of other good effects from it as well. Maybe Dr. Mike doesn't care about these things, but training to failure is very effective for growing muscle. You might not need to, but that's not what most people need to hear. And there are so many other things you get out of training to failure at the same time.
And it's more cathartic and psychological and less to do with what gets optimal results.
Nice. Okay, so I'm here editing this video now, and I kind of want to update my answer just
good, Jeff.
a little bit. I still kind of think that training to failure is slightly overrated. However, there's a brand new meta-analysis that did find that on average, training to failure was better for muscle growth than not training to failure. That doesn't mean that every set you do needs to be taken to
See, the science says it too.
failure, but I would say it's important. If you don't take any sets to failure, I would say you are leaving gains on the table. If I had to update my answer, training to failure is properly rated to slightly overrated. But I'm gonna give Mike a quick call and see if he wants to give an update.
I mean, I just want to, I kind of like Jeff's updated, nuanced view on the thing there, but who is overrated? Like, yeah, we are some guys that really like training to failure and push it, but I just don't see that it's overrated within the fitness community, you know, as a whole. I just don't see that personally myself.
Hey, Mike. In our last video, you said you thought training to failure was overrated. I'm just wondering if you'd want to update that.
Yes, training to failure is even more overrated. Probably more overrated than ever because of that recent meta-regression that came out that said that training to failure was superior for hypertrophy, but it turns out that's only the case if you train with very low volumes, you're not trying very hard, you're smaller, you're weaker, and you don't train very often. If you train a lot and you're really serious and you're really trying, in that very study, they say training to failure has no advantage. And because most people didn't read the study, almost no one read the study, I guess, then it's more overrated than ever.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I mean, I would never claim that, you know, Mike, he would make better progress if he trained to failure. But still, I just, to most people that get into fitness, this is not what they need to hear. Most people, like they say, people that don't train as often or aren't as big, and that, one of the best things you can do, actually, is that when you do it properly. You train really, really freaking hard.
Okay, the mind to muscle connection.
You go first.
I think that people who prefer to talk about mind-muscle connection sometimes are right in a nuanced way, but often are doing a mind-muscle connection at the expense of good technique and a lot of load and the right movements and especially progression. So as long as your technique is good, you have progression, then mind-muscle connection becomes important, but it's very much a quaternary or tertiary variable.
I completely agree. I think it's one of those things that matters and is generally good, but I think people overstate how much it actually matters. You can get a good mind-muscle connection and not necessarily have a sufficiently stimulative set if you didn't push that set hard.
How do you feel about it?
So what I would say, I pretty much agree with what they say there. Like, of course, you want to be, it's a good indicator that you're working the right muscle if you can feel it working. some muscles, like back muscles especially, you don't necessarily, the lats are hard to feel, but they have a certain function. So if you understand the function and you're using a movement that, I'm not finding my English right here, but you're actually doing the function. That's what your motion you're doing here. Even if you don't feel the lats working so much, like it burning in that, you're still doing it right. But and I just see in the gym, people are overly focused. Here in Sweden, they call it contact, but that's pretty much mind-muscle connection. I just see that they use way too low weight and just they hype it up. It's almost a reverse ego lifting. Like, I don't care about weight. I'm just looking for contact, And then, well, I'm thinking of a specific guy that talked a lot about this, and he was small, and he never got bigger.
About pumps.
Okay, I'm gonna say properly rated. I think pumps are fun and they make training more enjoyable. They probably have some connection to hypertrophy, and I think people think that pumps are good and fun, and they are, so yeah, properly rated.
Sure. I just mean underrated, and I think pumps are great. And in the evidence-based space, I think pumps are underrated. Whether or not you got a really good pump is a good gauge of if the target muscle was hit, if it's the right place that they're getting pumped, and also a good gauge of volume.
The next category.
Yeah. So I think in a similar way with the mind-muscle contact, if you think that just chasing the pump is going to give you something, I don't really think so. Because, if I do really high reps with very low, if I do 50 biceps curls, I'm going to get a biceps pump, but that's not necessarily what's going to stimulate muscle growth in my biceps. However, if I train hard in the way I like, and I'm also getting a pump in the muscle I'm trying to target, yeah, it's a good feeling, it's fun, like they say, but it is a good indicator that I'm doing something right.
Category is nutrition. Let's start with dirty bulking.
I think dirty bulking can be fun. It can lead to strength gain, but overall, it leads to vastly disproportionately more fat gain than it does muscle gain. And for that reason, I think it's overrated.
I mean, I have the stretch marks and loose skin to prove it. So I used to do it. I thought it was great. It was a lot of fun. It caused a lot of irreversible side effects. And I wish I would have stayed leaner, and it sure shit would have gotten me laid more often in college.
Natural testosterone.
Yeah, I would agree. Like dirty bulking, they didn't quite define what they mean by that, because sometimes it just means like eating a shit ton, but and not necessarily that it has to be junk food, But yeah, I think it's overrated. Like bulking, I definitely like it. Maybe there's a nuance, but if you're someone that's really, really skinny and have a really hard time gaining weight, and you're trying to, maybe going a little dirty on your diet, if muscle growth is very important, because it's not something you're going to have to do forever, right? Then there might be something to it. But yeah, I agree with what Jeff said. It just leads to disproportionate fat gain with very little to show for that if you were just doing like a modest bulk.
Testosterone boosters.
Go first.
Yeah, this will be super simple. There's no such thing.
If you want to boost your testosterone, take
Testosterone. It comes in a needle.
I mean, even if there was an over-the-counter herb that could boost testosterone, there's no evidence that it
Jeff hates Greg Doucette.
would do anything significant or noticeable for muscle mass, right? Which is why most people, I think, take it.
Also, the thing is that if a herb boosts testosterone, you have to ask by what mechanism is it doing that. If your own body detects that a serum testosterone increase has occurred, it usually downregulates its own production. So if you have a combination herb that also keeps your testosterone naturally producing higher, that is a pharmacological multi-compound drug that is not something that grows on a tree.
Right.
Sorry.
1 gram of
Yeah, no, I agree with this. Of course, people often ask me about how to boost testosterone, because I have quite high testosterone myself, naturally. And, maybe some of these herbs and stuff can do just a little bit. But what Dr. Mike said too, that from what I've seen, even the science I've looked at with some of these natural testosterone boosters, is that if there is any boost, it's temporary and it goes back to baseline after a while. And yeah, if you want to boost your testosterone naturally, nailing and improving on the fundamentals is going to be the key thing. Getting your nutrition right, your training right, sunlight, just minimizing stress, sleep. Sleep would be a big one, recovery.
protein per pound of body weight.
Ooh, I'm going to do the Jeff Nippard. It's just a little bit more than enough protein than you need for almost all cases. And because it's just a little bit more than enough, if you eat a relatively balanced diet, it obviates the need to pay high attention to protein quality. And it's a really easy number to remember. And if you live in the great nation of the United States of America, then you do pounds, goddamn. Woo!
But grams for food still. Okay, I'll say properly rated as well. I like 1 gram per pound with the caveat that it is actually more than you need in almost all instances. When cutting, I would say 1 gram per pound is a good rule. When bulking, you probably only need like 0.7 or 0.8 grams per pound.
What about
Yeah, completely agree. I think it's a pretty good goal to shoot for most of the time. But it is funny, like the people that want to bulk, that are on the skinnier side, they think that getting in the protein is the most important thing. But you know, if I take just a pure like whey protein shake, 40 grams of whey, I mean, I'm getting 150, maybe 200 calories there. And it's going to be the overall calories in total, you know, a calorie surplus is protein sparing as well. And so, yes, getting in enough protein, of course, it matters. But especially when bulking, yeah, it's pretty much, as long as you don't go super low on the protein, it's probably not what most people need to focus on. And yes, it is, in fact, more important when you cut, both to kind of, when you're not in a surplus and it's not protein sparing, it's important to keep the protein high so you have your needs for recovery and maybe even building some muscle when you cut. And also protein is the most satiating macronutrient, so it just helps with satiety when you're in a deficit.
body recomposition, also known as recomping?
I think recomping is underrated because most people in the general population can very reasonably expect to build muscle while losing fat at the same time, even though a lot of people in fitness culture tend to say, oh, you need to cut in bulk. I don't think that's actually true for most people.
I think those are great and valid points. I'm coming at a slightly different perspective. Just because you can do something and it is effective doesn't mean there's not a better way to do it. Almost all goals that you could achieve with recomping, you could do better with dedicated cutting and bulking. If you
Yeah, well, let's see what he finishes with.
want to be jacked or lean, then recomping will only take you so far. And after it runs its course, which is probably in about a year of dedicated recomping, you'll get almost all of it that you will. After that, you're going to have to pull some bigger triggers.
What about
Yeah, I tend to agree. Like for people that I coach, for instance, that are just everyday people that maybe don't even train at the moment and are like a little on the skinny fat side, yeah, you're in a great position to body recomp. Because you know your muscles are not you know your muscles are not that used to the training stimulus. They're kind of almost waiting to grow, and you can use your own body fat to make up missing calories if you eat in a maintenance and just smash your workouts hard, or even in a deficit, so that you can actually burn some fat and build muscle at the same time. But at a certain point, you're just like Mike says, if you want to get really big, you should focus on that. If you want to really lean, you should focus on that. And so at a certain point, it's more productive to do cycles of bulking and cutting. And many times a recomp is just because you can do it, in my experience, even as you get more advanced, but it's more a sign of a cut done right, you know, that you're really nailing it with your nutrition and recovery and training, and you're able to see some progress with your training, but it's never going to be as fast as when you're in a surplus. But you should still be focusing on cutting them and just doing everything as well as you can, and maybe you're going to see a slight recomp effect then too.
about diet soda?
Diet soda is, by almost all research accounts, essentially completely inert with regards to your health, and it tastes delicious, and it's amazing, and it's awesome. And it's underrated by people who think it's really bad for you, or who think it's as bad as regular soda, or who think it's worse, and they're just pure make-believe wrong.
So even just switching from regular soda to diet soda can result in weight loss in a lot of people. It can be so good for satiety and reducing cravings on a diet. It's a very underutilized tool.
I tend to agree with this, that you know, that there are some people like that are more health focused, and it's like, oh no, avoid aspartame and this. And I think the main argument is that it's bad, it might be bad for the gut microbiome, and that might be true. But all of these things, it exists on a spectrum. You know, if someone is now consuming liters and liters of sugary, highly processed soda, of course it would be better if they drink diet soda. Or if someone is losing weight, which will be, if they're overweight, that will be positive for their health, and they're eating mostly whole foods. If diet soda can make them happy enough so they can stick in a deficit, and for the most other, you know, stick to good foods, except pretty much this diet soda, then it is a good tool. So I think sometimes when people like criticize something like diet soda, it's like, is it good? You know, and then if you look at it in like a vacuum, it's like, no, it might have this side effect. But when you view things on a spectrum, yes, it is definitely a good tool at times. Something I leaned on earlier in my own fitness journey, and now I don't need it as much at all. Yeah, it depends for who, at what time, and their situation.
Diet breaks.
I'm gonna say underrated. There really shouldn't be any like major rush to get lean. I think in general people try to rush fat loss too much, and they'd be better off just like chilling out a little bit, taking the foot off the gas every once in a while, allowing your training to improve, allowing your muscles to fill back up. People could take a week or two off and just put their calories up to maintenance or even slightly above, and it would actually benefit them in the long run.
I think people like to lose all the weight they need to lose all.
Yeah, I think I would agree with this. You know, I see that I'm agreeing with a lot of things, but yeah, I think a lot of people that already follow me actually would need to hear this, because everyone is like, "How I want to lose weight fast. How fast can I do it?" You know, think of it as a long-term commitment, and you know, it would be much better sometimes, either instead of just pushing yourself so hard that you just explode and go on a binge or completely give up on your body, regain the weight. If you, instead of doing that, can be like, you know what, I'm actually going to take a break from weight loss. I'm just going to eat maintenance for a while. I'm not pushing it. Yeah, that might give you just, and you know, recover both physically but also mentally from having to push yourself in a deficit so that you can go on and lose weight later on. You know, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Weight loss. It should be something you do for the rest of your life. And then it's not a big sacrifice to just, you know, take a couple of weeks, for instance, and just maintain for a while before you go on cutting.
At the same time, and generally when it's more than 10% of your body weight, and even that's a high figure, you're going to have to take a long multi-month diet break for all of the diet fatigue to settle before you go on. So I think lose, you know, 5 to 8% of your body weight, take 2 or 3 months of maintenance, and then try again.
What about clean?
So I would just say that I think that that's a little more than you need in most cases, like month. Yeah, I don't have much to add. I see the point of taking diet breaks, absolutely. And you know, I'm not saying that it couldn't be longer. I mean, doesn't matter, really, if you're not in a hurry, if you're maintaining weight for 3 months and then go on. I just don't think most people would need that long.
Eating.
Controversy.
I think it's overrated because, for one, it's really, really hard to define. Everybody has a different definition of what eating clean means. If you take it to the extreme, you can get some really disordered eating behaviors. Ultimately, it can become so clean that there's nothing left on the menu. I think it's better to focus on an inclusive approach to diet. So you want to include a variety of different foods. For health, you want to include a bunch of different fruits and vegetables. And I don't really think any foods should be like strictly off the menu.
So I agree to some extent with this inclusive approach, and it comes back a little bit to what I said about the diet soda, that it's on a spectrum, you know, like I definitely think the goal should be to eat pretty much only whole foods or minimally processed foods. And it can be slight, I mean, something like whey protein and a diet soda, I wouldn't mind, you know, but like clean eating, it's only extreme compared to the norm these days that is really extreme. Like many of these highly processed foods that we have, they have not been around for a long time. And it's actually quite disordered to feel restricted in not getting to eat these highly processed foods. It's kind of saying I'm restricted if I don't get to do drugs. It is a drug, you know. So while it's a spectrum, while I would, in some cases, I would, like with a client, for instance, that has a really tough time, has been a huge junk food addict. Yeah, you can, you know, you don't have to go try to switch to completely just whole foods immediately, but I don't think it's overrated at all. That should be the end goal, to eat almost exclusively whole foods.
I think everything you said is valid, but I would say that clean eating is relatively easy to define. It is the absence of intentionally high palatability processed junk food. And I think that taking those foods mostly out of your diet, especially as a fat loss phase gets hard, can be really hugely advantageous. But in most other circumstances, mass gaining, maintenance, and even the beginning of a diet, some fun foods are awesome and a great part of life.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would agree with that. There's a certain balance because, you know, to someone that's used to eating these highly processed foods, regular whole foods might seem like boring, and they still have some kind of cravings, and that they need, you know, some. If they can't stick to it, then they need something like a diet soda, for instance, or some occasional treat or something. But on the other hand, when you eat in a deficit, if you eat more nutritious food, more satiating food, that in and of itself, you know, it will make you fuller. It will make you, it'll make it easier that way. So, you know, gotta look for the balance there. But I still stand by that in the end, eating almost exclusively whole foods is the goal. And I'll also say that when you bulk, for instance, when we talk about the dirty bulking and that, I find that I can eat a lot. If I eat a lot of mostly, almost only whole foods, I feel like the nutrient partitioning is just better. The body can be more productive with the energy you're actually consuming. You put on less fat and you have more energy for output, and you put on a good amount of muscle. So definitely a fan of clean eating. I don't think it's overrated at all.
I would agree with that. On a fat loss phase, you should try to reduce the super palatable, highly processed foods. That makes sense.
The third category is hot fitness topics.
Oh, geez. I thought these were all hot topics.
How do you feel about natty or not videos?
All right, I'll take this one. From the creator's standpoint, I think they're overrated because I believe in innocent until proven guilty. And if you're just speculating on someone's natural status on scant evidence, then you could be hurting their reputation. From the viewer's standpoint, I don't think they actually give you any value apart from just the fun of the drama, I guess, because the idea is that, oh, if they're not natty, then it's not realistic for me to look like them. But you can't really look like anyone else anyway because of genetic differences, right?
Yes.
So I think that from both the creator standpoint and the viewer standpoint, super overrated.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say is I think true natty or not journalistic approach, where someone who has made a real commitment to being drug-free and is lying about it, I think that's awesome. Exposing those frauds is a great thing. But natty or not videos are like when you've done zero research, you're just yelling at the camera and pretending you know things that you don't about anyone. And by the way, for
I wonder who is thinking about yelling at the camera.
context, I'm not natty. Just in case anyone wanted to say anything.
Fair enough.
What do you think about
Well, yeah, what I'd say about natty or not videos is, yeah, I would agree, overrated. You know, I think it's easy, it's low-hanging fruit. It's kind of like drama content that, you know, you get a lot of views on, but it does, a lot of the time, it doesn't really do much to educate people. I know they showed more plates, more dates there. I would agree that a kind of more journalistic approach for someone that has a lot of knowledge, you know, yeah, you might learn something from that. But to me, the natty or not thing, it's blackpilling for a lot of people. It makes it seem a lot that you can almost anyone that looks really good, they're probably not natural. They must be lying, you know. And for me, I would prefer, like, yeah, innocent till proven guilty. Of course, sometimes we have to just be a little like, come on, this is like a mutant. This is like a Hulk. Of course, he's not natural. Of course, I can't expect to look like that on steroids, without steroids, I mean. But yeah, I would like to give the benefit. It's better if people think that they can achieve more than they actually, because they're going to be motivated. They're going to be able to reach a level that they're very happy with, rather than this blackmail. No, you can't achieve anything. No. Anyone that looks good, now that they're on gear. There is that site that is maybe called Natural or Not, and that guy is just a perfect example of this. He's so blackpilled. He thinks no, he doesn't think Jeff is natural, and to me, yeah, just ridiculous. Definitely overrated.
about the idea that natty training is completely different from enhanced training?
Who wrote these? All right, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just like a fiction designed by two people, one natties that need an excuse for why they're not getting jacked, and two drug-addicted idiots that think that they don't have to read science papers.
I would say enhanced people can probably recover better. Is that not true either?
It's a very nuanced topic.
Yeah.
It's absolutely true, but if you're enhanced, that means you're more jacked, and as soon as you become more jacked, that enhanced recovery difference goes away because you're more jacked, you're stronger, you're bigger, and it's way harder to recover, so it just ends up leveling the playing field, and you get so big that you have trouble recovering even though you're enhanced.
So for all intents and purposes, like training principles are training principles.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would say it shouldn't be different. I think the person that takes steroids should train in the same way as the natural. But what I will say though is I think that enhanced lifters probably get away with a worse practice and get disproportionate results to that. You know, I know, speaking of science, you know, I know I've seen studies when untrained individuals take testosterone and they grow some muscle, not maybe a ton, but they grow some muscle just from that. So to me, it would make sense that someone with unnaturally high testosterone will get a disproportionate response from doing something that isn't optimal. And that's why I think there are these guys that are maybe around my size that you see that you see the advice they give and what they do, that it's not close to what I would consider optimal, and still they have a pretty good physique. That's when I suspect that this person is probably not natural. That's why they're actually getting pretty good results, even though they're doing something that is suboptimal. So yeah, I would say it shouldn't be different. Of course, this kind of person would, the enhanced guy with a poor training practice would be even bigger if they trained properly. But yeah, basically, basically, the enhanced individual, I think, could get away with worse practice, but they shouldn't, of course. It shouldn't be a difference to how you approach your training.
Cold showers.
Research vetted way to reduce hypertrophy. If you think that they offer you an effect of that sort of shock therapy, waking you up and it being a sympathetic driver for part of your day, because sympathetic parasympathetic balance is really good, then you don't train hard enough. Go train.
Yeah, I think overrated. I feel like it's just a lot of hype with very, very little evidence.
Except for reduce hypertrophy.
Yeah, reduce hypertrophy. It does seem to definitely do that.
Okay, what about
So this is again, they're giving their take on cold showers. I don't know that anyone is claiming like, yeah, it's great for muscle growth. You know, someone like myself that has this, yes, I call what I do bodybuilding, but it's not my price or my goal no matter what. And I will do absolutely everything and avoid anything that I think could interfere even the slightest with my muscle growth. No, I think cold showers is good for discipline mainly. It's not so much for me the physical response like that. It's I have a practice that I do a cold shower, or right now a cold plunge for a minute or something every morning. And it's more about starting the day off with doing something that I don't really want to do. And it's good for my discipline and mindset. And my discipline and mindset will help me in the gym. So it's not directly that, oh, this immersing myself in cold water just makes my muscle grow more, but it makes me as a person grow. Some of us are not just, even if we like building muscle and we're fans of that, that's not what we're looking for only. And these things can be a positive part of our practice too, even if it technically is not good for muscle growth.
about no FAP, also known as semen retention?
Oh, bro. I don't know where the shit started, but in the wild, humans fap. And they also fap with each other. And the overemphasis on the toxicity of both masturbation and is without research support. And there's absolutely unhealthy ways and weird relationships.
Here, yeah, you're just saying, yeah, I think no fap is probably overrated. That it's something magical about just not fapping forever, that just will be great for you. I'm a proponent of a low fap, as I call it. I have videos on that. I won't talk too much of it. You shouldn't abuse it, and I know that Dr. Mike is going to go on to say a bit about that. But this is where I think the over-intellectualized thing comes in, because there's not enough evidence with the porn that affects you in a certain way. I mean, this is something I don't think you need science to figure out, that being exposed to something like that, it changes the way you view that. It's not good for your self-esteem, your view of women or men. You know, it goes for both sexes. So it's a very bad thing. And I mean, again, I guess they are all relating this just to muscle growth and that. But this is again, there's lacking morals to this when you're just coming from the research doesn't suggest. And I'm like, yeah, but that is a fucking dirty thing. There's a lot of terrible thing that goes into that industry, the people involved, and the people who consume it. I'm trying to just not be too explicit in how I talk right now, but yeah, overrated, no fap, yes, but you should it's definitely something you should have a healthy relationship with. The P word you should stay away from altogether.
You can get into that. The vast minority of people get into that. If that's you, I feel you. That sucks. You should be getting looked at and treatment and backing off. But for most people, good God, it's just normal and it's just not a big deal.
And there's no evidence that that I'm aware of that it like boosts testosterone to a substantial degree over the long term, or that it improves training performance.
All right, locking out.
You know, I would agree that it's, if you practice no fap, it could be, you know, I see it as an intervention for the right person, and then to just have a normal relationship to fapping. But if you think this is gonna boost your testosterone or make you train better, no, that's just not the case.
The knees is dangerous.
Go ahead.
There's neither evidence nor rationale for that, and your knees are designed to lock out, and if you control the lockout gently and you don't snap into it like a psycho and turn your muscles off at the end, and you're not one of the people with some sort of laxity disorder, you're gonna be just fine. And you need strong knees.
Again, I think it goes back to people approaching training with a very fragile mindset. They think if they just move in slightly the wrong way, then everything's gonna break and it's gonna be the end of them. It's not true.
Filming in gym.
I just, you know, I don't disagree much with what was said there. I just find it kind of funny. A little contradictory in a sense with Dr. Mike, like, oh, cheat reps, higher risk of injury, and da. But then a thing like that is like, oh, no, you're not fragile. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, well, you aren't fragile, you know. So yeah, I don't, personally, I don't lock out my knees completely. It just doesn't feel comfortable to me. I'm someone that wants to train through as long of a range of motion as possible. But if you leave this amount of range of motion to just not completely lock out your knees, I don't think there's an issue with that. So yeah, I pretty much agree with what they said. I just think it's kind of, high risk of injury, ego lifting. But yeah, lock out your knees. Yeah, the way Dr. Mike does it, I'm sure he knows what he does. I'm not going to criticize his process at all, but it looks scary to me, the way he really locks out those knees.
Gyms.
I think underrated. I think it's overhated. I feel like people hate on people filming at the gym, like, oh, why are you filming at the gym, this and that. I film at the gym and it helps educate people on training. As long as you're not disrespecting other people who maybe don't want to be on camera or violating the gym rules, I'm all for it.
I think as the world becomes more technologically advanced and as more of us start to wear eventually VR glasses, AR glasses, eventually AR contact lenses, being out in public will be implicit consent for being on anyone's video. And also, yeah, of course I'm going to film my training, and anyone should be able to film their training too. And if you walk through someone's camera, you will be on camera because you're out in public anyway. Are you kidding me? And Facebook and Instagram and stuff is just another version of public. You were out in the gym, weren't you? If someone's filming in your own private gym and you don't want to be on there, I understand. And also, oh, there's tripods everywhere. So what? Walk around. There's also machines everywhere. Get out of here.
If you didn't see the last video,
Yeah, I think it's a little strange to say that filming, or like rate filming in the gym as overrated or underrated. You know, I'm someone that films for my content, Instagram mainly, in the gym. I do it. I understand if someone walks, you know, in a way, one of my clips gets a bit ruined from that. I can't complain about that, of course, because while I think it should be okay to film, I don't expect everyone to like, yeah, I'm filming, can't be in the way, because of course it is a public gym, but no one should take offense to that really either. Like, what does it matter if you show a little bit of my video? Like, no one knows who you are, and you're seen, and no one is thinking about you, really. But what I would say is that for someone that isn't an influencer or content creator or whatever, it is underrated to just film yourself. It can be quite just fun to see if you hit the personal best, just having the video of that. But it is a great way to observe yourself. You know, sometimes you think you're doing something in a certain way, and then when you look at, oh man, maybe I don't have quite as long of a range of motion as I thought. Oh, that doesn't really look the way I thought. Maybe I should change my foot position on the squat. You know, but it's a great tool for just being able to observe yourself. Yeah, so underrated for people that don't just use it for their content.
I did a shoulder workout with Dr. Mike. I'll put a link to that over here somewhere. Make sure you check out his...
Yeah, they're done. I'm done. I don't have much to add. I found myself agreeing with quite a bit in this video, more than I remembered when I saw it the first time. But yeah, I still think it can be useful to, especially to some of my followers, just and getting some things confirmed. There are some things in there, like training to failure, and that I really have a different view on. I just wanted to try this, really. I'm kind of new to doing this kind of content. So yeah, I think that's all I'll say now. Thank you for tuning in. Please like and comment, subscribe for more content about fitness, fast limbs and weight, building muscles, self-improvement, stoicism, mental health, philosophy, mindset, spirituality, well, mindset. Yeah, see you guys in another video. Peace.